Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this FinPath University class. This FinPath University Financial Wellness course is going to be focused on student loan forgiveness. Definitely a topic that is important to a lot of folks. Definitely a topic that we get a lot of questions about. So we wanted to offer this information as an opportunity for you to get a little bit more guidance and hopefully some support around this subject. Our idea is that you walk away having a little bit more knowledge about the subject and maybe some practical application on how you can potentially benefit from student loan forgiveness and how that's going to affect your monthly cash flow, but also your total amount of debt and managing that debt as you move forward. For your host today, I have myself, Matt Escalante. I'm certified financial planner, senior director of institutional investment services with TCG Advisors and a part of the FinPath program. And with me today co-hosting is Daryl Smith. Daryl is a certified personal finance counselor and a financial wellness coach with FinPath and the Foundation 99 Financial Wellness Foundation. Daryl, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be here. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely, Daryl. I mean, because we have been out there and we've spoken with folks that have a lot of questions around this topic. I think it can be somewhat confusing just based off a little bit of the process, but also some of the noise around the topic as well. There's been several publications and information from newspapers and articles on it about this program and so forth. So again, hopefully we can get some folks some more information and benefit from great federal programs such as public service loan forgiveness. So what we'll do is over the course of the course today, we'll definitely discuss these topics. One, we'll talk some of the basics of student loans. We'll talk about the public service loan forgiveness as a federal program that's out there to help both lower the payments, but also potentially forgive large portions of loans. Again, there's a process that has to be followed and completed correctly in order to take advantage of this program. We'll also take you through a program called Teacher Loan Forgiveness, which is a little bit different. And then, of course, how to take action on these items. So we start to look at a little bit about student loan basics. What we can see is that student loan debt is astronomically high. We look at that and compared to auto loan debt, credit card debt. We can see that just alone, student loan debt is the highest at just over $1.56 trillion outstanding. So, if you couple the management of that debt, if you're somebody that also happens to use your credit card for spending, who also happens to have an auto loan, it can be fairly overwhelming when you think of that as a whole. But also when you're looking at your monthly cash flow and your budgeting, and we talk a lot about that within our FinPath University courses, is how do we optimize that cash flow so that we can be managing our debt, so that we can be taking care of our current needs, but also putting money away towards future financial goals that we might have for ourselves. So if we look at that number on the top right-hand corner, we can see that the average individual student loan debt is just over $32,000. So quite a bit outstanding there. So what does that impact on our monthly cash flow? We can see the average student loan payment of just under $400 a month. So that's a lot to deal with if you're in a situation where you already have a significant amount of living expenses. And what we're hoping to share with you today is how can we use the services that are out there, the programs that are out there, public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, to, again, as we talked about, one, reduce the total amount owed, but also two, reduce the amount we're paying on a monthly basis to free up our cash flow. So there's several student loan programs that are out there, federal student loan programs, and some of these just have to do with who's paying, why they're paying, all that kind of stuff. Who's issuing the loan are some of the distinguishing factors to come into what kind of federal student loan that you might have. Federal Perkins loan program is where whatever institution that you're attending, they're loaning you the money directly to attend that institution. Parent Plus loans, this is where the parent is taking that loan out on behalf of their child that will be attending the institution. So in this case, the parent is the borrower and obligated for the repayment and so forth. The direct loan program, these loans are issued by the Department of Education. And these are the ones that we're really focused on when it comes to programs like public service loan forgiveness. So if you have a direct loan, whether it is subsidized or unsubsidized, whatever that might be, I think in most cases, a lot of folks are going to fall into the subsidized category to where they're not having to pay that interest until they actually leave that institution that they're attending. But that's where we're going to spend a lot of our time is on the direct loan program to qualify for the programs. And then finally, federal family education loan programs. These are just made by private institutions such as banks or credit unions, whoever it might be, but they just have an underwriting guarantee from the Department of Education and so forth. One thing that we're not necessarily going to talk about in this presentation, because it doesn't necessarily qualify for the programs that we want to talk about, is you could potentially have a private loan. Those private loans, you always have the option, if you're looking for a way to free up cash flows, to go back to whoever your lender is to refinance, to talk about interest rates, to maybe use an outside service to refinance those loan payments. But you're not going to be able to qualify for some of these federal programs with a private loan. So a little bit about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is, this was started in October of 2007. So that was the first time that folks actually got to go through the process of certifying their employment, that they worked for an employer that had qualified for this. And we'll talk about what qualifies you as an employee under Public Service Loan Forgiveness on one of our follow-up slides. But that's when the program really got put into place. So we start to flash forward, 10 years from that, 2017, 2018, that's where we really started to see folks really applying for that public service loan forgiveness because they had gone through that 10-year cycle. So basically what public service loan forgiveness looks like, or what happens, is when you are able to apply to get a portion of your student loan forgiven tax-free, if you have gone through the process of making 120 payments, so basically 10 years, while you worked in public service, whether it's police or fire or federal government, state government, school employee, whatever it might be, that qualifies you for the program. So that's why I mentioned that 2017, 2018 number was kind of important, because that would have been the period where your first set of people would have made their 120 payments. And that kind of gives us some data that we'll share with you as a result of who kind of gets who qualifies for the actual loan forgiveness portion. As
Matt,
we talk.
I'm sorry. Matt, I was just going to add, and I'm looking at that first statement, that 120 payments over 10 years. One thing that sometimes is not mentioned is that those 120 payments, they don't always have to be consecutive. So if you take a year off and come back, and then you do another year, those 120 payments or those 10 years do not have to be consecutive necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important. Some people go on leave. Some people maybe change employer for a little period of time. But it's important to know that while it's 120 payments, it doesn't necessarily have to be 10 years. It could be 11, it could be 12, but it's really those 120 qualified payments that you're looking for. That we're just kind of giving you the, if you work it straight through, that's going to fall across a 10-year period. You must have a direct loan. So a direct subsidized or unsubsidized loan is what's going to get you qualified for this. And then the other part where I think is really important is, you must really get yourself on an income-driven repayment program. I think that this is critically important. It's not necessarily vital, but if you don't go on an income-driven repayment program that reduces your monthly payment, then by the time you actually go to apply to get portion of your loan forgiven, there's not going to be anything to forgive, because after 10 years, you would have basically have paid it off. So going on an income-driven payment is important. Basically, an income-driven payment, what it does is it sets your student loan payment at an amount that's intended to be affordable based off your income and your family size. So there's 4 different ways that you can get on an income-driven repayment. There's the revised pay-as-you-earn payment plan. There's the pay-as-you-earn repayment plan. There's the income-based repayment plan and the income contingent repayment plan. So all 4 of these qualify, but ultimately what you want to do is get yourself in this place where you're paying less on a monthly basis. Obviously, that helps you significantly because of the impact on your monthly cash flow. But also that's going to leave some loan amount kind of left over at the end to apply to get forgiven through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. We just have to make sure that, a couple things that apply. You can't still be in school, you can't be in deferment, you can't be in forbearance, and you can't have defaulted on the program, on your loan. Those things will cause you to not qualify for Public Service Loan Forgiveness.
Matt, if I might add, there are a couple of other payment programs that are out there that do not qualify. So you might want to just make note, but the graduated repayment plan does not qualify, the extended repayment plan, and the alternative repayment plan. None of those 3 qualify for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when thinking of an income-driven repayment plan, basically what they're looking at is a percentage of the amount of the income-driven payment plan is a percentage of your discretionary income. Again, based off your income and your family size, based off your adjusted gross income. So if you're doing some planning going into an income-driven repayment plan, if there are ways that you can show your income as being lower, that's really going to help affect and bring that monthly payment down as much as possible. So, for example, if I'm somebody that, makes, $50,000 a year, there's ways that I can show my adjusted gross income to be lower by making pre-tax contributions to some of the benefits I have available to me. So if I make $50,000 a year, but the combination of my contributions to my FSA or HSA or retirement account or whatever it is, if I'm making those contributions on a pre-tax basis, let's say the total of that for me is $10,000. Now my adjusted gross income is only $40,000. And if we're looking at an income-driven repayment program, the result of that is I'm probably going to have a lower monthly payment to pay my loan because I show that I have a much lower income and would have to have a lower loan payment in order to kind of fulfill the needs of this income-driven repayment program. So who qualifies for Public Service Loan Forgiveness? We kind of talked about this on the front end. Employees of federal, state, local governments, school employees, police, fire, anyone that works for a 501c3. So it could be a nonprofit, it could be a government institution, whatever that might be. As long as it's a 501c3, then you are basically are going to qualify, and it should be any employee there. There are some exceptions. Labor unions, political organizations, they do not qualify for Public Service Loan Forgiveness. And then the last part is that you must be a direct employee for the employer. Nobody that is a contractor, anybody. And the easiest way to tell here is how does the individual get paid? If somebody is a direct employee, chances are they're going to be a W-2 employee. If somebody's a contractor, they're generally going to be a 1099 type employee. So it must be a direct employee of the organization. So then we got to take action. How do we take action on Public Service Loan Forgiveness? So I think of this really as a 3-step process. The first thing you want to do is obviously get on a income-driven repayment program. That is going to basically, kind of leave some meat on the bone at the end so that after you're done with your 120 payments, there's going to be an amount of loan still outstanding that you're going to apply for at the end of those 120 payments to be forgiven. So really going on that income-driven repayment. The second part is making sure that you're getting all of your employment certification completed along the way as you go. So as the bullet points state out here, you must certify that you've worked for a qualifying organization for all 120 payments. This is not something that you have to necessarily do annually. You're not required to, but it's probably a good idea to get this done annually. And each employer that you worked for under those 120 payments have to certify your employment. So that could be one employer. Maybe you spent the last 10 years and the last 120 payments with one employer. You would just need to get the certification form signed by that single employer. Maybe you move to 3 or 4 employers. You would have to get that form signed by each one of the employers. So, one of our recommendations here is to definitely make sure that you get that done annually, so that you have that information on record. So you don't have to go back at a later point to try to find a signature from an employer that hopefully you left on good terms, but maybe you didn't. It might be a struggle to try to get that certification. So that's step 2, getting the certification from the employers where you made those 120 payments. Then the final part of it is, now that you're done, once you've completed those 120 payments, now you're actually submitting the application. In the application, you're saying that, hey, I've successfully completed this. I made 120 payments. Here's my certification. And they will then examine basically your outstanding loan amount, and will give you a determination on kind of what portion of that loan amount as a whole is eligible to be forgiven. It could be a significant amount. It could be a smaller amount. I guess all amounts are significant, but it's going to be high or low just depending on what's out there and you have left outstanding. So that's, again, why we recommend to go to that income-driven repayment, to leave some of that loan amount out there, so that by the time you do go apply, there's something to be forgiven and basically eliminated for you. So those are our recommendations here: is get your certification signed every year, and then definitely send your certification form and your application in by certified mail, and make sure that you make a copy of those before you send them in to the department to complete that process. So we want to share with you some stats on public service loan forgiveness. If you see on the top left corner, public service loan forgiveness, current borrowers, you have just about 1.2 million. You can see that there's been a significant number of total applications of over 136,000. What's interesting here is some of the numbers on the second row is the number of applications approved in proportion to the total number of applicants is relatively low. Just 1,561, and the stats will kind of give us a little, and then we have the number of applicants denied, 123,146, and we can see the reasons why. So 56% of applications were denied because people didn't qualify. So maybe they didn't make the appropriate amount of payments, maybe the total number, or maybe some of the payments they made while they were not working for a certified employer. So those could be the issues. 24% of applications denied due to missing information. So just not filling out the form correctly. So really, my recommendation here is definitely stay on top of the paperwork, making sure you're getting your certification done and complete, making sure that you're tracking all those income-driven repayments and they're totaling up to 120 before you go through the application process and then having to deal with not getting that approved. So I think that's why I think the numbers here are a little bit misleading. I don't want people to be discouraged by seeing this low number of people that have been approved. I just want you to focus on tracking yourself, making sure you're getting your data, and then submitting it for forgiveness. There's another program out there. If for some reason your public service loan forgiveness is not for you, there is the teacher loan forgiveness program. This one's a little bit more straightforward, a little bit easier to understand, kind of a lesser complication in process. There's a capped threshold of what you can get forgiven at $17,500, to where on the public service loan forgiveness size, I've seen double that. I've seen triple that have been forgiven by going through that process. So the teacher loan forgiveness is a good tool if you're somebody that is obviously has an amount outstanding less than 17,500. If you're trying to, again, get the whole amount forgiven. There are some specific requirements that we have listed for teacher loan forgiveness. You have to be a teacher in a STEM subject to be eligible. You must be a classroom teacher. So, where public service loan forgiveness, the librarian or somebody that works in the administration office, they can also apply. But for teacher loan forgiveness, you have to be a classroom teacher in order to get this benefit. Must have your bachelor's degree and fully certified as a teacher within the state. And you must work for a low-income school, whether it's a high school, middle school, elementary school. Title I is going to apply, but have to teach in at a low-income school. Must have been a teacher for 5 consecutive years. And this, again, kind of going back to really focusing on the direct loans, whether it's subsidized or unsubsidized, has to be a direct loan to qualify. As mentioned here in the final bullet, all loans must have been taken after October 1 of 1998 in order to qualify for the teacher loan forgiveness program. So when the pandemic hit and, we had the resulting kind of economic crisis, right? The pandemic hits, there's shutdown of schools and our economy and everything like that is, March 27th of this year, the government passed the CARES Act. And the CARES Act had a lot of things that related to retirement plans, related to unemployment benefits, and had some specific items related to federal student loans. So basically what the CARES Act did is once it was passed, it allowed people to basically put a pause on the loan payments, the principal, the interest of their federal student loans for a 6-month period without any type of penalty to the borrower. This was done automatically. You didn't have to do anything. A lot of folks that had a loan would see a statement that just basically, said zero payment when they were getting them during this time. That the suspension was through September 30th of 2020, and in fact has been extended to basically December 31 of 2020. So I know the slide says through September 30 because that's what the original CARES Act proposed. The government has extended that out to December 31 of 2020. So likely wouldn't have to see your payments pick up again until January of 2021. So if you're somebody that has been having to make that payment and you're living with that payment, you're probably seeing the direct effect of that portion being canceled. Of course, we're here to help you. If you have any additional questions about public service loan forgiveness or would like to apply some of the information that you learned the information you learned to your individual situation, we have set up the Telewealth virtual consultation platform. You can access it by directly through a link inside of your FinPath account. So you can log in. When you're inside of the tools, you can see an opportunity to get connected with a financial coach, or you can go direct through finpathwellness.com/telewealth. What you'll see is a calendar like you see on the right-hand side with a date. You can choose the date and time that's most convenient for you to have a conversation with our financial coach around this topic and others. It's really easy to have the conversation. It can be done either over the phone or a virtual consultation through Zoom, whichever one you feel the most comfortable with. But we invite you to get connected with our coaches to help you to either improve or to accelerate any area of personal finance where you can use some support.
Hey, Matt, I just wanted to add, looks like we have a few questions that were generated during the presentation. Did you want to go ahead and address those right now?
Yep, perfect segue. Happy to take questions right now. Just want to remind everybody to go ahead and submit your questions through the Q&A function. As Daryl mentioned, we do have a couple of questions here. I'll go ahead and read out the first one. The first one is there a way to check how many payments you've made so far towards the 120? Gerald, do you want to take that one or?
Sure, sure. You know, the way I would approach that is to think about who your loan servicers are. So if you're not getting a statement, you can either go online and get that statement or contact your loan servicers directly, and you can then kind of reconcile your records to see how many payments you have done. I don't think there's one specific place that I know of, Matt, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but usually your loan service providers are going to have that information for you.
Yeah, they're going to have a lot of information, and honestly, working through your loan servicer to get on a income-driven repayment program is likely where you're going to fall. The and trying to figure out, we mentioned that there's about 4 income-driven repayment programs to consider. I would definitely suggest working with your loan servicer to walk through and figure out which one of those is going to be the most advantageous to you. So I would definitely take that course of action. We also have a question here that is, if you applied and were granted teacher loan forgiveness, can you use the time period along with public service loan forgiveness? And it basically yes. If you're making those payments and they qualify for the if they qualify as certified, the payments made while you're with a certified employer, then definitely go ahead and use those payments to apply to your 120 as you are applying at the end of your 120 to get public service loan forgiveness fulfilled.
I'm not seeing any other questions from that, but when some folks signed up, Matt, we did have a few more good questions that I wanted to maybe address, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the questions was, is it better to take out a loan or borrow? I'm assuming that's a student loan. Is it better to take out a student loan or borrow equity against your home? And that's really going to depend on some individual situations and where you're at. But some pros of taking out using a home equity loan to finance education. It can be easier for folks to qualify if they have poor credit because the equity loan is secured by the residents. Some cons of that are that the payback clock starts, as soon as a loan is processed. So you're going to be making some loan payments right away. And then also there's no deferments associated with a personal home equity loan in that respect. So, and then the last thing, that there's no loan forgiveness programs associated with home equity loans. So those are some things that you may want to consider, but again, it really depends on your own personal situation. Matt, anything you want to add to that?
No, I agree with you 100%. I think that's where there's definitely some features, whether it's interest rate, whether it's being subsidized and not having to pay the interest until you actually leave, the forgiveness programs that I definitely think are more appealing when it comes to financing.
Okay, our next question that we had before the seminar, we had a person ask, I have loans that were for my kids attending college. Now I'm assuming that the person who asked the question is saying that they took out the loans themselves. And so it really, really depends on what type of loans these are. Were they the Parent Plus loans that are, the federal program? Then those are that type of loan would be able to have some qualifications for loan forgiveness. But if it was say it was a signature loan or, some type of other loan that you took out through a financial institution, it may not. Most likely they will not. But it really just depends on the type of loan that you took out. One of the other questions that we had multiple questions was that folks were wanting to know, they weren't either able to make the presentation or they were going to be late to the presentation, and they were wondering if we were going to send that invitation out to people, or they had access to it. Can you answer that, Matt?
Yeah, anybody that has registered will get a emailed copy of the presentation.
Awesome. And then the last thing that I wanted to say in regards to questions, if you have questions, feel free to submit them. Anybody who does submit a question, we will respond to you with an answer to your question. And then also, as a financial coach, with the links that you see there on the previous screen, you're able to make, a 30-minute appointment to get a lot of these questions answered, or whatever financial questions that you have. So feel free to use this as an option for, getting your information that you need. That's all I have, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Daryl. So what we will do, just as we kind of wrap up the presentation and we see some people that are coming out, is want to thank everybody for being a part of this presentation. If you submitted a question through the Q&A function and we didn't get a chance to answer it, then we will we'll go ahead and circle back with you and make sure that we get connected with you to answer those questions that you might have. As always, I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't already, is go ahead and register yourself for your free FinPath financial wellness platform tool. You can get that at finpathwellness.com. Click the register button, put in your employer email address, and you'll get a link sent to your email to complete the registration process. This course and other courses are hosted there for you to view at your convenience at a later time. And we'll also be sending this out to folks that got a chance to attend. If you have any questions or concerns, we have for you our advisor hotline at 512-600-5204. That will get you connected to a coach basically almost immediately when they answer the phone on the other line, and you're welcome to answer any question, ask any questions. Daryl, I want to thank you for joining today on this FinPath Financial Wellness course, and looking forward to everybody joining us again next time.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.